My name is Rachel Miller, 31 years old, a software engineer living in Denver, Colorado. If you asked me what matters most in life, I wouldn't talk about career, money, or fame. For me, it's always been the family home on that quiet street at the foot of the Rockies, the place where my grandfather taught me to ride a bike, where I stayed up all night fixing every creaky step, where I believe family ties will always be anchored forever. But on one autumn evening, during what seemed like a warm family dinner, I learned a brutal truth. Sometimes, the very place you call home becomes the sharpest knife plunged into your heart. The kitchen smelled of roasted chicken, the dining table set neatly. I'd just gotten off work, still in my coat. Dad sat at the head of the table, eyes fixed on his glass of swirling red wine. My sister Claire had flown in from California, sitting across from me, her bright red lipstick and sparkling silver ring on her finger, screaming success to anyone who looked. Mom, in her old shawl, placed dishes in front of each of us, her demeanor seemingly gentle. But the air in the room, it was so heavy that the slightest move could shatter the pretense. And that's exactly what happened when Mom suddenly slammed her fork down on the table. The metallic clang rang out like a death knell. "You have 48 hours to pack your things," she said, her voice ice cold. "This house belongs to Claire." In that instant, the whole world tilted. I looked around, hoping it was some cruel joke. But no. Dad didn't protest. He just bowed his head, avoiding my eyes, silent in a way that was terrifying. Claire, instead of being shocked, smiled triumphantly, her lips curling as if she'd been waiting for this moment forever. I sat frozen. Each heartbeat thundered in my chest like a hammer strike. The house I'd poured sweat, tears, and my youth into keeping, to have it ripped away with just one sentence. The feeling of being evicted from the home I'd saved was so agonizing I couldn't even speak. The air at the table turned frigid. The wall clock ticked away, counting down my final 48 hours here. My heart felt hollow. The food in front of me turned to stone, harder to swallow than any bitter words. Mom sat ramrod straight, her eyes full of arrogance, like she was delivering a final verdict. Dad sipped his wine, his hand trembling slightly but offering no objection. Claire picked up her water glass, shrugged. "You should be happy for me, Rachel. I'll take good care of the place." Those words twisted the knife deeper into the already throbbing pain. I wanted to scream, to stand up and smash this fake dinner to pieces. I wanted to demand, "Where's the fairness? The years I paid off the bank loans, fixed every brick? Where were you all?" But my lips were sealed shut. All I had was a choking lump rising in my throat, squeezing my chest until it ached. I should have exploded. But I didn't. I realized arguing would just make me look weaker. They'd already decided. They thought I'd slink away quietly, invisible and accepting. But I'm not like that. I sat still, picking at the cold chicken, forcing my face to stay calm. In my mind, memories flooded back like a reel playing in reverse. The day Grandpa died, I clutched his old mug and swore I'd keep this house as a legacy. The day the foreclosure notice came, I shakily signed the first $20,000 check from my only savings. Those freezing winter nights, kneeling to reattach each splintered piece of the rotting staircase, blood trickling from my fingertips. All of it, now meaningless in their eyes. The meal ended in silence. No bon appetit, no family stories, just the suffocating weight of schemes. I got up and cleared the dishes like a robot. No one stopped me, no one said a word. As I walked down the hallway, I heard Claire's giggle from the living room, Mom instructing her like she was handing over spoils of war. I bit my lip, swallowed tears, and headed straight up the stairs. My familiar bedroom greeted me with darkness. I sat on the bed, opened the drawer, and pulled out my notebook. My hand shook as I wrote the first lines after that fateful night. "They think I'll just leave. They're wrong." I closed the notebook and sat in silence. Deep down, a small flame ignited, not of hatred, but of resolve. I knew this was just the beginning of the fight to reclaim justice. If you've ever felt rejected by your own family, you know that bone-chilling pain is unlike any other. It doesn't come from an outside enemy, but from the people you love most. And sometimes, the only way to stand firm is to stay silent, plan, and strike at the right moment. Have you ever had something you believed was yours taken away? If so, drop a comment. I want to hear your story. Don't forget to hit follow to join me, because what happens after that ultimatum will surprise you even more. Have you ever wondered what makes a person stay silent instead of exploding? For me, it's the memories. Every time I wanted to scream, I was held back by a flood of past images, the days I bled and cried to keep this house standing. And then, when Mom dropped that cruel ultimatum, all those memories crashed over me, tearing my heart apart. 5 years ago, my family was on the brink of bankruptcy. Dad got laid off after 30 years at a construction company. Mom had heart issues and couldn't work full-time. Bills piled up, and the bank's demands grew thicker by the day. I remember the day we got the foreclosure notice like it was yesterday. The bank gave us 30 days. If we couldn't pay $80,000, the house would be gone. Dad slumped at the table, hands in his hair, eyes vacant. Mom paced, breathing hard, tears welling up. I, fresh off a raise at my software job, sat between them feeling like the world was collapsing. "We'll lose everything," Mom whispered, her voice trembling. It squeezed my chest like a vice. I did something no one forced me to. I drained my savings and took on side gigs. Nights coding until 3 a.m., up at 7 for work. Some days my eyes burned red, head pounding like a hammer, but I gritted my teeth and signed that first check, $20,000. Then $15,000, $10,000, until we hit $80,000 and the bank backed off. I remember the moment I signed the transfer papers. My hands shook, sweat soaking through, mind spinning. But seeing Dad's relieved smile, hearing Mom's sigh, I told myself, worth it. This is our home, our family. After saving the house, I kept pouring in effort to fix it up. The rotting wooden stairs, I replaced each board myself. Peeling walls, I rolled up my sleeves and painted until the smell clung to my skin for weeks. I moonlighted, saved up for a new sofa, a reliable washer, the beige curtains Mom had always wanted. Every item in the house tied back to my sweat. I wasn't just rebuilding the home, I was rebuilding the belief that one day my parents would look at me with pride. But where was Claire? Living it up in California at a marketing firm. She'd call occasionally to brag about fancy parties, then brush it off awkwardly when I mentioned family struggles. "You're so strong, Rachel," Claire once said over the phone, her tone casual. "But that's your thing. I'm swamped. I can't get involved." I stayed quiet, swallowing the hurt. From then on, I thought my parents' feelings would change. I figured they'd see that without me. They'd have lost it all. But reality, no. They started comparing me to Claire more. "Your sister's so busy, she's killing it in California," Mom would say, beaming. "Claire's got that gift of gab, great connections," Dad would nod. And me? They saw me as the bill payer. My sacrifices boiled down to, "Rachel's got it handled." Nights alone in my room, staring at the ceiling, tears streaming. I'd wonder, is there any fairness in this family? Why is the one who works hardest taken for granted, while the careless one gets coddled? One memory still stings to this day. Dad's birthday. I'd saved a whole month's salary for an expensive watch. I gave it to him, hoping for pride, but he glanced at it dismissively, then showed off the shirt Claire sent from California. Right up my alley, that girl gets me. I stood there, the gift still boxed. I forced a smile, but inside, the chills seeped to my bones. When Mom said 48 hours to get out, it hit me. All those sacrifices never mattered to them. They denied me, erased my efforts to hand the house to someone who hadn't contributed a dime. That feeling, like my family had stomped on my heart. I tormented myself with questions. Why? How could parents do this? Why give the house to Claire and make me leave? That pain turned to resolve. I couldn't take it lying down anymore. If they denied my efforts, I'd find legal proof to let justice speak. I sat at the table, opened my notebook, and wrote boldly, "Time to uncover the truth. Can't let them deny it anymore." What do you think? Should a daughter who sacrificed everything but still gets denied by her family stay silent or stand up for justice? If you find this story gripping, comment why. If not, N. I really want your take, because from here, the story takes a wild turn. There are moments you think you've hit rock bottom with the shocks, but fate jabs you again. I thought 48 hours to pack was the ultimate betrayal, but no, that was just the tip of the iceberg. The real truth hid deeper, forcing me to revisit my entire childhood. That very night, I called Anna, my best friend from college. We'd shared all-nighters cramming for exams, picked each other up after falls. Anna's the type who never compromises with injustice, and I knew if anyone had my back now, it was her. I spilled it all. The ultimatum, Claire's smug smile, Dad's cowardly silence, Mom's icy stare. Anna listened quietly, jotting notes. When I finished, she looked up, eyes steely. Rachel, something's off. Who did this house originally belong to before your parents' names were on it? That question unlocked a door to memories. I thought of Grandpa, the man who'd built this house with his calloused hands his whole life. I'd heard him say, "This house will always be yours, Rachel." Back then, I figured he was just comforting a sensitive kid. But now, those words felt like a clue. Anna jumped in. She called a colleague specializing in inheritance law and had him check county records. I waited anxiously, each minute stretching like hours. Meanwhile, memories of Grandpa sharpened. Afternoons on the porch with him, sipping tea from his chipped porcelain mug, listening to his tales of a hardscrabble youth. He'd told me, "You have to be strong. This house isn't just bricks and mortar, it's a witness to a whole family. One day it'll be yours, to keep the fire alive for generations." I'd laughed it off as vague promises, but now those words echoed in my heart like prophecy. If you want to hear more stories and dilemmas like this that I'm facing and resonate with, you can check out my previous videos on this channel. About an hour later, my phone rang. Anna's voice tumbled out. "Rachel, you gotta hear this. Grandpa left a will, and the legal heir to the house is you." I froze. "What?" Anna read from the records. The will, drafted 3 years before he died, notarized, witness signatures, all legit. It stated clearly, "I bequeath full ownership of the house in Denver to my granddaughter, Rachel Miller." My ears rang. It felt like someone had yanked away the curtain hiding the truth all these years. My parents, they knew. They'd hidden the will, buried Grandpa's last wish to give the house to Claire. I dropped the phone, hands shaking. The pieces of betrayal snapped into a chilling picture. Dad's unnatural silence. Mom's arrogant glare when declaring the house Claire's. Claire's triumphant smile like she knew it all along. They hadn't just taken my efforts. They'd lied. They'd betrayed Grandpa's wishes, the one person who'd believed in me unconditionally. Tears hit my hands. I gripped Grandpa's old mug, still on my bookshelf. The chip on the rim scraped my skin, reminding me of every word he'd said. In the dark, I almost heard his voice. "This house will always be yours." I collapsed onto the table, pain surging. Not for the property, not for rights, but because my parents chose to deceive me, to reject me, handing it all to someone who'd never cared. I felt like that 5-year-old abandoned kid again, only this wound cut deeper. Anna put her hand on my shoulder. "Rachel, stay sharp. This will is proof. We can get justice." I looked up, eyes red. "But Anna, they're my parents. How can I sue them?" She met my gaze, firm. "You're not doing this for revenge. You're protecting the truth, honoring Grandpa's wish, and defending yourself. Remember, they chose wrong. Now it's your turn." I took a deep breath. The pain lingered, but the flame of determination roared. I couldn't let Grandpa be forgotten. I couldn't let the truth be twisted, and I sure as hell couldn't let my efforts be buried again. I wiped my tears, placed the will in front of me. "Okay, we'll do it. We'll get justice." Anna gave a small smile, but her eyes serious. "Then gear up, Rachel. This is just the start." Do you believe sometimes the most effective revenge isn't yelling or exploding, but absolute calm? After uncovering the will's secret, I knew I had to act. Not with rage, but with evidence, logic, and what I'd done for years. Stand firm, steadfast. I started by digging out every old receipt. Piles of papers I'd once seen as junk now became weapons. Sofa purchase slips, washer bills, curtain payments, bank statements showing debt transfers. I organized them into stacks, clipped neatly. Each one whispered that my efforts were never invisible. They'd just chosen not to see. At one point, staring at the mountain of docs, I laughed bitterly. So to prove I'm not invisible, I need a whole arsenal of proof. But then I clenched my fists. I knew the truth was on my side. Alongside gathering papers, I called a moving company. I remember the call with the coordinator clearly. "I need a truck ASAP, maybe in the next 2 days." "Where you moving to, ma'am?" he asked. "I'm not leaving, I'm just taking back what's mine." There was a pause, then softly, "I get it." When the truck arrived, I directed the movers, pointing to each item. The gray sofa bought with my first bonus. The flat-screen TV from my Endofear savings. The dining chairs when Mom griped about the old wobbly ones. All loaded up, wrapped carefully. The house emptied bit by bit. Each item leaving stung my heart, but also lightened the load. I whispered, "You want the perks, Claire? You'll get 4 bare walls, and that's exactly it." The day Claire rolled into Denver, I was ready. The door swung open, her heels clicking on the wood floor. She dragged her suitcase in, eyes scanning the living room, and froze. "What the hell is this?" Claire shrieked, voice shrill. "Where's all the stuff?" I crossed my arms, leaning in the doorway. "I took it. It's mine." Her face flushed red, voice choking on fury. "You had no right. Mom said this is my house. You can't just take everything." I stepped closer, words clear, calm. "If you want to live here, furnish it yourself. I'm only taking what I paid for, not a dime of yours." Claire went still. Clearly she hadn't expected my backbone. But then she scoffed a laugh. "So you think grabbing a few things changes anything? This house is still mine." I didn't fire back right away. In my eyes, that smile was thin paint over rotten drywall. I knew one tap and it'd crumble. Anna filed all the docs with the court. Grandpa's will, my contribution proof, all verified. The hearing went quicker than expected. My parents couldn't deny Grandpa's signature or the bills proving I'd carried the house for years. In the end, the judge ruled, the house follows the will. But I didn't keep it. I didn't want to spend another day in a place soaked in lies. I had Anna handle selling it to a local investor. Signing the transfer papers, my hands felt strangely light. The house had been a weight on my shoulders, a mix of Grandpa's memories and my parents' betrayal. Letting it go hurt, but it freed me. That night, I returned one last time. The living room bare, stairs echoing my steps. I moved slowly, touching walls I'd painted, steps I'd fixed. Grandpa's memories flooded in. He smiled, hand on my shoulder, voice warm. "This house will always be yours." Tears spilled. "I'm sorry, Grandpa. I kept my promise, but I can't let it chain me anymore." I stood in the empty living room, afternoon sun streaming through the window onto the bare floor. I breathed deep and whispered, "It's over, starting fresh from here." See, sometimes letting go is how you honor a promise. I protected Grandpa's wish, but I also chose to free myself. Have you ever thought you'd escaped your past, built a solid wall, only for fate to crack it open and let old wounds rush back? I believed selling the house cut the family ties. But destiny has its own way of testing resolve. Months had passed since the sale to the local investor. I'd moved to a small downtown Denver apartment. It wasn't big, but sunlight poured through big windows, mornings brewing coffee, evenings reading on my old sofa. Simple things that brought peace. Anna visited often. We'd chat for hours. I rediscovered joy in work, diving into new projects. Each day I learned to live without my parents' approval. But news of them still trickled in. After the house drama leaked, they downsized to a cramped rental in the suburbs. Claire bolted back to California, scraping loans for her own place. Family shattered, reputation in ruins. I heard it and just stayed quiet. I no longer carried the burden of their messes. One early winter afternoon, snow flurrying on the street, I hit a clinic near work for a checkup. In the waiting room, flipping through old magazines, names called steadily. I had no clue today would shake me up again. Then I saw them. My parents in the far corner, so worn I almost missed them. Dad gaunt, shoulders slumped, hair grayer. Mom's face hollow, bony hands trembling with a prescription slip. I overheard their whisper. The meds were too pricey. They couldn't afford it. The sight froze me. Two voices clashed in my head, one furious. "They deserve it. Payback for the betrayal." The other soft. "Blood is blood. Can you really turn away?" I sat there, turmoil churning. Memories surged. Mom's smug smile handing the house to Claire. Dad's silent stare. Nights I burned the midnight oil for bank payments. My hands shook. Anger or pity, I couldn't tell. I could have walked out. No one would have blamed me. Hell, many would have said it was right. But my heart wouldn't let me. Seeing them so broken, I realized revenge wouldn't bring peace. I stood, Steps heavy but steady. I went straight to the pharmacy counter where Mom asked about costs. The clerk shook her head. Prescription meds, it's steep. Without insurance, it'll be tough. I stepped in, slid my credit card down. My voice steady, low but clear. I'll cover it, not out of duty, but because I don't want to see you suffer like this. The room hushed for seconds. Mom turned, eyes wide, then burst into tears. Dad bowed his head, silent, shoulders shaking. No more words. When the clerk handed over the meds, I just nodded and turned away. I didn't need thanks. I didn't do it for forgiveness or mending unbreakable cracks. I did it for me, because I didn't want to become bitter. Outside the clinic, snow fell thicker. I tilted my face up, letting cold flakes melt on my skin. My chest still heavy, but oddly serene. In that moment, I'd chosen my path, not letting hate define who I become. Lots of folks think forgiveness is weakness, but for me, it's the greatest strength. Forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting. I'll never forget what they did, but I can choose not to let it destroy me. I can choose to move forward, soul lighter. That night, I wrote in my journal, some wounds never fully heal, but I can learn to live with them without letting them define me. I closed the book, gazed out the window at streetlights blurred in the snow. A new feeling crept in, freedom. Have you ever walked away from a battle, victory in hand, but your heart heavy like you'd lost something irreplaceable? After it all, I realized true victory isn't in rulings or wills. It's how you live after the wreckage. I live in my new downtown Denver apartment. Mornings, sun streams through big glass onto warm wood floors. I brew coffee, play soft music, dive into work. No more tension in old walls, no barbs or comparisons. Just me and quiet. Anna drops by often. She brings pastries, shares case stories. I cook dinner. We laugh more, and for the first time in years, friendship feels like true shelter, unconditional, no strings. I'm deep in work, grabbing creative projects. Colleagues see me differently. I'm no longer Rachel in the shadow of a broken family. I'm Rachel, the steadfast, talented software engineer with her own voice. As for Claire, word is she borrowed heavily for a small California house. No ancestral home to lean on, she's hauling her own load, paying debts, balancing job and bills. Some think I'd gloat, but honestly, I don't cheer her struggles. I just sigh. Because in the end, Claire's learning the lesson I lived a decade. Real value comes from work and independence. My parents are still in the suburbs, in that peeling paint rental with a cramped living room. I don't visit, but updates slip through old neighbors. Dad's quieter, often by the window. Mom doesn't brag about Claire anymore. They've faded into the community backdrop, credibility shot after the favoritism exposed. Hearing that stirs mixed feelings. I'm not glad they're down. The betrayal doesn't sting as fresh. I just feel light. Light because they finally face their own fallout. I don't go back. I don't reach out. But I don't harbor hate either. Forgiveness, for me, isn't wiping the slate or diving back into the whirlpool. It's keeping enough distance to guard my peace, but close enough that if they truly repent, a door's ajar. Once, Anna asked, "You ever think about forgiving them?" I smiled. Forgiveness isn't a one and done. It's a process. Every day I don't let the pain call the shots. That's forgiveness in action. But going back? No. I need healthy boundaries, so we all get space to heal our way. One afternoon, by the window, watching a fiery sunset drape the Rockies. The dying light made the city sparkle, but reminded me everything ends. I told myself, I held on to justice. I didn't lose kindness and peace. I found it again. Tears fell, but not bitter. They were tears of release. Maybe after my full story, you'll see the real win wasn't reclaiming the house. It was reclaiming me. I learned justice needs reason to defend it. Love can't be forced, and forgiveness isn't forgetting. It's choosing not to let hate wreck your soul. I went from betrayal's agony to turmoil, rising calm, finally touching serenity. And I believe anyone can, if they hold fast to their own worth. If this story gave you something, empathy, courage, or just a pause, drop a comment with your thoughts. Don't forget to like and subscribe so you don't miss the next ones. Who knows? The next tale might mirror part of your life.